Morning, Rabbi.
Good morning. My name is Rabbi Shalom Lipschitz. I grew up in Long Island, and now I became a rabbi in the same community where I grew up. So I lead the JLI chapter in Woodbury, New York, and today we're going to begin lesson 5. So before we begin lesson 5 of JLI, a journey of the soul, we have to start off with an icebreaker joke, which is quite important to understanding this lesson. And that is that two engineers were applying for a job at an engineering firm. And when the last two candidates came to the pool, they took a 20-question test. Both of them answered 19 correctly. One of them was rejected, the other was accepted. So the one that was rejected say, hey, it's not fair. We both got the same answer wrong, and yet you accepted him and rejected me? He said, you have to look at what you answered. He answered to question 19, I don't know. And you answered, me neither. So in this lesson, we're going to be discussing reincarnation. And it's important to know that I don't know, just like you don't know. In other words, we're going to be discussing the text and the sources, the Jewish sources of reincarnation. There will be some questions that I will not be able to give you the answer to. I just don't know the answer because I don't have any memory of a past life or a future life. A lot of these things here are teachings of Jewish tradition that have been revealed by divine inspiration to special people, either through Moses, through Kabbalah, Kabbalistic works, and so that's what I'm sharing with you today. I'm not sharing personal knowledge of the topic. I'm just sharing the source text of this conversation. Before we do that, it's very important for me to understand how comfortable you are with the idea. Does the idea of reincarnation, does that give you a positive feeling or a negative feeling? Are you fascinated with the topic, or does it disturb you? So if you chime in.
I'm interested about it. I'm interested in to hear your perspective or to hear the Jewish perspective on it. Yes. So I'm open to it.
Anyone disturbed by a conversation? No. Okay.
No.
So
I've actually found myself to be. Let me start my video. I can't see myself, Rabbi, so I hope that.
There you
go. Well, at least you can see me. I've actually found myself over the whole course a peace and a joy which has been incredible, and I've also found that much of what I've used, I've been a practicing physician taking care of patients with breast cancer for 25, 20, 30 years, whatever it's been. And I have found that some of the things that I'm hearing for the first time, as I'm a Jew by choice, are enlightening. And I've been using some of those things as I've guided patients with their end-of-life journey. So it's been a marvelous experience for me, and I'm really looking forward to the reincarnation aspect to see what I can add to my wheelhouse.
Very good. So let's start with this very important exercise on page 175 in the student book, exercise 5.1. And this is a bunch of true or false statements. So I'm just going to read through the statements, but you could go ahead or behind. No need to wait for me to read through them. So statement number 1, belief in reincarnation is basic to Judaism, true or false? Statement number 2, in the Jewish view, reincarnation means that a soul that inhabited one body returns to inhabit another. 3, true or false? A human soul can be reincarnated as a non-human entity, such as an animal or a plant. 4, a reincarnated soul does not have its own identity, but shares its identity with someone who lived in a previous lifetime. 5, True or false? The purpose of doing good in one's current lifetime is to be reincarnated as a person of higher status. 6. A soul is reincarnated as a penalty for sins committed in a prior life. And 7, most souls today are reincarnations. So these are a bunch of true or false statements, and we're going to relook at these statements at the end of class to see where we landed, how many of them we were spot on, how many of them we missed the mark. And okay, let's take a go. So the first thing we have to set the concept straight is that reincarnation is a Jewish thing. It is a Jewish thing. The fact that we're dedicating a whole lesson kind of hints to that. But let's take a look at a prayer that Jews recite just before they go to bed. They recite the Nighttime Shema. It's a mitzvah in the Torah to recite the Shema when you wake up and when you go to sleep. And in all Jewish prayer books, during the nighttime reading of the Shema, it opens with the following paragraph, text 1. So I'm going to go in order of the list. Cheryl, if you can read for us text 1 on page 176.
Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anyone who has angered or vexed me, or sinned against me, or either physically or financially, against my honor or anything else that is mine, whether accidentally or intentionally, inadvertently or deliberately, by speech or by deed, in this incarnation or in any other.
Okay, so it's a powerful, beautiful prayer. Jews don't go to sleep with a grudge. We try to forgive everyone before we go to sleep. And the topic is a whole topic. How could you forgive someone who hurt you? And we did in another JLI course. And hopefully it'll be brought up in future JLI courses. But that's not the main focus of what we're studying here today. Not the value of forgiveness, but just the idea as we take it for granted that we're forgiving people who slighted us in this reincarnation or in a past one. So, and that's just mentioned like as an obvious statement that reincarnation is a Jewish belief. And that brings us to a few questions. So first of all, question number 1, which is why some people are uncomfortable with reincarnation, is that the benefit is obviously you feel a continuation with the past and with history, but part of the downsides is you may feel a denial of personal identity. Like, so I'm not for myself. I'm part of some bigger, I was here many times before. Am I the same? When I'm having a conversation with someone on the other side of the subway, are we really the same soul that's reincarnated back in time through history, past, present, future? Is that possible? Are all people in this class right now the same soul? And just playing from different points of view? Where's the sense of personal identity in that? So that's what kind of can make people uncomfortable. And that's what we're going to try to address here today. But now that we established that reincarnation is a Jewish belief, the question becomes, when does reincarnation happen? If the soul is reincarnated, when does it experience Gan Eden or Gehenna that we discussed in last class? We said the soul is the primary you is the soul. You are primarily your soul. And when your body dies, your soul lives on and experiences God in a freeing way. So when does it get reincarnated? Is it always jumping? You die and you're reborn right away. You go to paradise for a few months and then you come down. How does that work? Okay. So to understand this, we have to study some Kabbalah. Let's understand the Kabbalistic point of view of the world. God created the world. Originally, before we had this universe, and you may have heard this concept in a previous JLI class, before there was this world, there was a first draft of the world that was perfect, but had no ownership. It had no self-ownership. It wasn't built by the world. The world didn't fix itself. God created a perfect world, and since it was a limited world with God's perfection, it couldn't handle being perfect in God's finite in God's presence, and so there was a shattering. Right? In the opening verse of the Torah, it says, in the beginning there was chaos. That's what the Kabbalists refer to. The chaos was a universe, was a kind of reality of a perfect, intense world that shattered. And now God recreated the world from those broken pieces and then created the soul of man in order to rearrange those pieces. So it's kind of like you have the binding of a book fell off, and now you have thousands of pages scattered all over. And the soul of man, its job is to reorganize the pages and to bring meaning to this broken universe. Okay, and it's not. This concept is not so important to this class. So if you didn't get it or it's above you, that's okay. But the basic idea is that the human soul was brought into this world to take chaos and bring meaning to it, and show how everything that looks like random is really part of God's divine plan, and everything has a purpose, and everything works holistically together. And that's the job of man, the human soul in this world, is to bring order to the chaos. And the chaos itself is intense light, but because it's out of order, it seems meaningless. So it's like you have a nuclear reactor, and you plug in your toaster oven, and then the toaster oven explodes. So the goal is we try to put a few inverters in a way, try to figure out how to merge these two realities of intense divine revelation without disturbing the natural state of the world. We want the world to remain a world, and we want that world to become a home for God. And that's the paradox that the human soul was, the marriage that the human soul was brought down to arrange, that the world and God can come together without the world losing its identity, and without having to restrict God's revelation. So that's the work we've been doing for the 6,000 years. And there was one soul that was brought about to do this job, and that was the soul of Adam. Adam is the first man, and that's the job of his soul. His soul was to bring this marriage between heaven and earth, so to speak, between God and the world. And we're using this euphemistically. We don't really mean that the world is separate from God, but we mean that the world has its own kind of independent structures and rules. And we want to bring God into this world without breaking too much of the natural rules and sense of identity that the world has. And that's the soul of Adam. And this soul jumped around throughout every generation to a different person in the generation. Sometimes the soul split into a few people to accomplish this mission. And this soul eventually splits into Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So now there are three people tasked with doing this mission in three distinct paths that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob shared 15 years that they were all alive together, and they were each expressing a different part of the job. Doing this task is a tremendous task, and it takes a lot of effort and creativity, and there's so many different angles to it to complete this task, to make the home, the world a home for God. And Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob tried to complete the task. And then when Jacob had 12 tribes, so this general soul branches into further souls to complete the task. And these 12 tribes, they have branched into the 70 souls of Jacob's family. We read how Jacob entered Egypt with 70 souls. These are 70 branches of this general soul that had this primary mission. There are many other souls in the world that exist to do other missions. Their mission is not to bridge the gap, to make the marriage of the world and God. We're speaking to this specific soul. This specific soul had this mission, and that mission eventually ended up by the Jewish people. The mission to bridge the heaven and earth, to make that marriage, and that eventually ended up into the 600,000 root souls of the Jewish people that were present at Mount Sinai. Now you'll say there was much more than 600,000 Jews at Mount Sinai. There was approximately 3 million. But those souls were not root souls. They were not primary souls. They were only 600,000 root souls. Every other soul was encapsulated into one of those things. What do we mean by that? What are we trying to say when we give a number to souls? If they're the same soul shared by many people, right? Adam had one soul. 600,000 people now have the same soul. So we're all the same? No. Adam is like the human body, right? When Adam wants to go eat a cookie, all different parts of his body are engaged in the eating of the cookie. He activates his mind, he activates his, everything is working, the foot, the arm, the heart, everything is working together to get the cookie and to enjoy the cookie. The 600 root souls represent different body parts, so to speak, in the human tree that have specific missions. So while all cells in the body start off the same, they all branch into different purpose and function. The stem cell gets its own purpose and function. And these 600,000 root souls each have a very specific function in the world to accomplish. And one soul and another soul, they have completely different missions within this bigger body, which is represented by the soul of Adam. They have this one general overreaching theme, but they each accomplish it in a different way. And so no soul can do the job of the other root soul. Each soul has its own mission. Okay? So that's the general idea. Does it branch off to further than 600,000? We're going to get to that in a moment. So let's read text 2 so we can see it inside. This is a work written by Reb Chaim Vital. He was the authorized writer of the teachings of the Ari, the great Kabbalist from Tzfat in the 16th, in the 1500s, the late 1400s, 1500s. And we're going to take a read. He wrote a work called Shar HaGegulim, the Gate of Reincarnation. And so we're going to use his text as a primary source for this lesson. So Leslie, if you can read for us text 2.
It all began with one master soul, the soul of Adam, which included all future souls. Subsequently, this master soul passed on to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and was then divided among the 12 tribes. Afterward, the soul was further partitioned among the 70 souls, the descendants of Jacob that accompanied him to Egypt, and eventually among 600,000 souls who left Egypt.
Okay. Now we have to introduce another building block. The next building block is, how do we make the marriage between heaven and earth? How do we do it? We go about this with God's manual, which is the Torah. God gave us an instruction book called the Torah, and we study this Torah, and it gives us a manual for life. And in it is 613 mitzvot. When each soul does the 613 mitzvot, it is able to bridge heaven and earth. So that's the Kabbalistic view of why we're here, what's our mission in life. We are here to make a marriage. So it's, the cosmic marriage, and we do that by the way of mitzvah. So let's read, Sophia, if you can read for us text 3.
Furthermore, you must know that every person must fulfill all of the 613 mitzvot. If a soul does not fulfill all 613 mitzvot in action, speech, and thought, it must be reincarnated until it completes them all.
Okay, so now we get to the idea of why reincarnation exists. Reincarnation exists because the soul's mission is to reveal God's presence, fulfill all 613 mitzvot, and rectify and elevate every part of the human body and soul, In other words, it's not just that there is 613 mitzvot, there is 613 sparks in each root soul. Each root soul has 613 body parts. It's like the limbs and the in Jewish teaching, although I don't know if it matches up exactly, the 365 prohibitions of the Torah correspond to the different the different arteries in the body, and the 248 positive commandments correspond to the limbs of the body. And so the same way a body has those different mitzvot, the soul also has these different elements to it that it needs to elevate. So the body needs to be elevated, the soul needs to be elevated, and the world itself needs to be elevated. There's different areas of the world that need to be elevated in order to allow for this marriage of God and the world. And so that's why we're here to do 613 mitzvahs. Now the catch is that it's impossible for any soul to do all 613 mitzvahs. It's impossible to do it in one lifetime. And it's not just because there's so many, but it's certain of them, you have to be in a certain place or be a certain person in order to fulfill it. For example, we know that in Judaism, there's a Kohen and a Levi and an Israelite. Israelite has certain mitzvot that a Kohen does not have. For example, to give teruma, to take from his agriculture product, he has to give some to the Kohen. So the Kohen doesn't have that mitzvah because he himself is a Kohen, right? The Kohen has certain temple mitzvot that he fulfilled, and certain mitzvot can only be performed in the Holy Land. What if you were a Jew that never lived in the Holy Land? So you cannot do all 613 mitzvot. So the soul comes back down into the world, into different bodies, to be able to fulfill all 613 mitzvot in order to complete its soul elevation, and more importantly, to complete the elevation of the world through rectifying this part of the 600,000 roots that its soul has. Before we go on, let's take some questions because that was a lot. Any questions?
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. I might be reading this a little too literally. So in text 2, when it says, subsequently, this master soul passed on to Abraham, Isaac, and Joseph and Jacob, okay, and then was divided. Does it mean each person gets each individual got a complete soul or a piece of the soul?
So
You see what I'm
something to
saying?
understand about souls, it's like a flame. When you have a candle that's an unlit candle and you put it next to the lit candle, now you have two candles. Is each candle less of a candle because one broke away from the other?
No.
Not really. It's still a full soul. So even just one small spark of this master soul can give life to a whole body.
I got
Yet,
it.
this specific spark doesn't have the same mission, the same all-encompassing mission. Adam's soul, its mission was to rectify the entire world. And the whole world. We don't have that mission to rectify the whole world. We have our mission to rectify a certain part of the world that's a subgroup of the general mission that Adam had.
Forget it. Okay.
Okay.
But we don't know what that is.
We don't know what our mission is. We're going to get to that. Very good.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Okay, so that's the first goal. The first reason we come down in a body. And additionally, we may see that our main goal is the main objective of studying Torah is to help us do the mitzvahs. Is to help us be a guide to life. But there's actually another goal in Judaism, which is for the soul to learn the entire Torah, independent of whether that Torah wisdom is used to perfect the world. Because Torah is not just a book of information, it's divine wisdom, infinite wisdom, that the soul has to connect with that infinite wisdom in order to fulfill its mission. And so ultimately, every soul has to learn the entire Torah. And every soul has a different dimension of understanding the Torah. So to help us process that a little better, we're going to watch a video.
Human authors express themselves in their works, both directly and subtly, sometimes intentionally and always subconsciously. When we read a text, we can choose either to read the lines or to engage in more intricate analysis and read between the lines. The divine author of the Torah did something similar, but to an infinitely greater degree. God expressed himself in the text in multiple ways all at once, directly as well as subtly, with plenty of insinuation and a vast hidden layer of the divine subconscious. And he then instructed us to excavate it all. Jewish tradition separates these layers of understanding into 4 categories. The first is pshat, direct intention, which is derived by examining context and syntax. For example, the Torah begins with the words, Bereshis bara Elokim, es hashemayim, ve'es haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On the plainest level of Torah understanding, this is a straightforward statement of what happened at the beginning of time. But the simple meaning is not always easy to clarify. Many biblical commentators, most notably Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, the 11th century French scholar known universally as Rashi, devoted their efforts to clarifying the straightforward meaning of the often mysterious biblical texts. Our second layer of understanding is Rems Illusion. This refers to subtle communications that are encoded in the text. They can be uncovered using methods such as the numerical values of the Hebrew letters, the acronyms of words and phrases, or unusually sized letters in the Torah scroll. For example, the Torah's first 2 words, Bereshis bara, in the beginning, God created, carry the numerical value of 1116. That's the identical value of the phrase Barosh Hashanah Nivra. It was created on Rosh Hashanah. We are thereby informed that Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of creation. Our third layer of understanding is drush, interpretive. Our sages extrapolate a vast corpus of ideas and instruction from the Torah's text through methods such as textual comparison, sequencing analysis, and homiletical interpretation. For example, from a sequencing perspective, the Torah begins with the wrong beginning. It describes creation, a narrative that is seemingly secondary to the Torah's primary function as a book of guidance that tells us how God expects us to act on a daily basis. The Torah should have dived directly into the nitty-gritty of the laws. On the interpretive level, however, the Torah first describes creation to tackle a major hurdle to Torah observance. The majority of Torah laws rely on the Jewish nation owning and settling the land of Israel. We were instructed to conquer the land and never relinquish our claim of ownership over it. But such a radical claim to a territory is bound to provoke opposition. Who gives us the right to take possession of a land and claim it as our eternal heritage? The Torah, therefore, begins with creation, clarifying that God is the creator of all territories, and he has the right to permanently bequeath a specific parcel to a particular people. It then records the history of God doing precisely that with the Jewish people. With this switch in sequence, the Torah supplies the Jews with the response God expects them to provide all who accuse them of land theft and occupation. The fourth layer of understanding is sod, hidden meaning. This refers to the deeply mystical messages that float behind every phrase and letter in the Torah. For example, the word Bereshis can be split perfectly into 2 words, bara, shis, meaning He created 6. God first formed the 6 emotive divine attributes from chesed, kindness, through yesod, attachment, as described in Jewish mysticism. God then used these 6 attributes to create the actual universe. So there you have a sampling of the 4 layers of understanding that can be found in the Torah's very first words. Beyond this, a vast ocean of knowledge is contained in these same words. And beyond that stretches the infinite vastness of wisdom contained in the rest of the Torah's close to 80,000 words.
So the Torah is vast, and we each have to study the entire Torah. Now, will each of us, each root soul, will they study Torah in the same way? No.
No.
When each of them explore the simple meaning, they can arrive at different perspectives of simple meanings because their root soul is different than the other person's root soul. So they're not expected to arrive at the same perspective because they're approaching God from different directions. And so it is a badge of pride when we say that 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Right? We don't say, oh, these Jewish people, they're always arguing. It's actually, we're proud of our diverse perspectives because we don't expect anyone to share our perspective. Everyone has a unique perspective, and it is a mitzvah on each of us to find our own perspective within Torah. Now that it has to be logically sound, and it also can't break any of the fundamental principles of Torah. And it doesn't mean that we'll rely on that interpretation for halachic ruling, but it is a mitzvah to find your interpretation within the verse. So just like the schools of Shammai and Hillel, the great schools, had countless debates, and settled law only lands with one of the schools. You know, the ruling is like this, or the ruling's like that. But both perspectives, the Talmud says, are words of the living God. Both these are true and that is true. They're just true on different dimensions. And when we lead our life in the physical world, we can't jump between dimensions. We have to choose one way. And so there's a settled law, but it doesn't mean that other perspectives offered before the law was settled are not equally true and valid. They're just maybe valid in a more higher dimension of reality or a lower dimension of reality, from where the rabbis actually settled, this is how you should live life. And you'll remember just 2 lessons ago, we brought a question about, rending the garment. When someone is mourning and he rends his outer garment in mourning, is that to calm his anger? So he should be less angry, be an outlet for grief? Or is that to evoke his grief? For someone who's not grieving, for him to be able to initiate and experience grief. And we brought a text, which is a rabbi saying that another rabbi said that the purpose of tearing your garment is to anchor your grief and to calm down your grief. And in my opinion, it's exactly the opposite. It's really to magnify your grief and to initiate the process of grief. And they're both true from different perspectives. And they're both elements that we have to work to. And each soul has a mission to uncover the whole Torah from his perspective on all 4 dimensions. Okay? And sometimes you won't do it in one lifetime. So that's another reason why you might come down in numerous lifetimes in order to uncover many levels of Torah. So here it's just going through a slide that capturing the 4 major categories of uncovering the Torah that we have to accomplish, and that will explain a parallel, a special text that we read in the morning after the Amidah. After the Amidah, we say a text as well as the beginning of the morning service, which is text 5a. Haiti, would you like to read for us text 5a?
Yes.
Page 179 in the same book.
May it be your will, our God and God of our fathers, that the holy temple be rebuilt speedily in our days, and grant us our portion in your Torah.
Okay, so there's two prayers here. And the second prayer is that we should be granted to find our portion in the Torah. We could spend our whole life studying somebody else's perspective in Torah, and we're asking God, please help us find our portion in the Torah, our section of the Torah that we have to elevate or unleash to the world, reveal to the world, and our dimension within the Torah that we process the Torah. And that is that's linked to the concept of the rebuilding of the Holy Temple, that once we complete our mission of repairing the world, and once we complete our mission of uncovering all different perspectives of Torah, then we will be able to enter a new age where heaven and earth is in harmony and in sync and working together, and we will be able to rebuild the Holy Temple. So let's read text 5b. Who's so going to read first? Boss, can you read first text 5b?
As explained in numerous sources, the soul of each Jew has a specific segment of the Torah with which it is particularly associated. This explains the phrasing of our sage's statement, "Grant us our portion in your Torah." Our portion implies that each of us has a unique portion within the Torah. This concept is further expressed in our sage's statement that there are novel Torah concepts that an accomplished student of the Torah is destined to introduce. In other words, the entire universe anticipates the birth of this particular diligent student, awaiting the moment that the student innovates, meaning uncovers this specific concept within the Torah. For this concept is this student's portion in the Torah.
Very good. So in summary, each soul must uncover its unique portion in the Torah. So the mission of that section of the root soul is complete. Once it completes all 613 mitzvot, once it studies the Torah on all 4 layers, and once it reveals its unique portion in the Torah. There's always a unique portion which your soul was meant to reveal to the world that other souls never paid attention to or never processed it, and you unlock it for the world. So those are the 3 missions of every dimension of the soul, of every root soul. Every one of the 600 root souls has to go through these 3 processes. And if they don't, they return. But we now get an important thing to understand. When it returns, if let's say the soul did 612 of the mitzvot, does the entire soul have to return to the world? Or only the parts of the soul that didn't get elevated or rectified or do those missions return? In other words, we explained that the soul has 613 facets that it has to elevate and process by doing the mitzvot and studying the Torah. Let's say it did it in past reincarnations, but now it did 612. It has 1 mitzvah short. So in text 6, and we're returning to the same text, even though we're writing text 6, it's from the same prime source. He explains to us that the reincarnated soul is not 100% identical to the soul that lived in the previous life. Only the parts of the soul that need elevation come back, or only the sparks of the soul that need to complete its mission come back. The rest of the soul goes on to experience paradise. And so our question is, when is paradise experienced? Paradise is experienced by the parts of the soul that completed its mission, and the parts of the soul that didn't complete its mission keep on coming back with a new mission. So it's almost a spin-off soul of this primary root soul. So let's read text 6. Who didn't read for us yet? Sandy?
I didn't read.
Okay.
Although we stated in numerous passages of this treatise that a specific individual soul was reincarnated in a particular person, it was subsequently reincarnated in another specific individual, and so on. Do not misread this as implying that the original soul itself is reincarnated repeatedly. Rather, each human soul branches out into innumerable roots. Every root contains an infinite quantity of soul sparks. With each subsequent reincarnation, a number of these sparks are rectified, and they'll ascend to the to enjoy the rewards of heaven and dwell on the particular strata of Gan Eden that are appropriate for them. However, those soul sparks that were not rectified and are reincarnated to provide further opportunity for rectification.
Okay, beautiful. Now here's where we add the last building block. Once we add this last building block, we'll have a complete picture of the Jewish view of reincarnation. It doesn't mean we'll have answers to all our questions. We'll have the complete, all the fundamental building blocks. And the last building block is, can your soul be damaged in this world? Let's say your soul comes into the world to do a mission, but it chooses not to do the mission. We're granted freedom of choice, or we don't know that we have a mission, or like when we're in the body, we have no memory of the fact that we chose to come down because of a mission. And so it takes us time to uncover our mission, or could we damage our soul? And the answer is yes, we could cause damage to our soul. So while our soul keeps on coming down because it wants to do all 613 mitzvot, there's also risk. And the risk is that it could cause damage. Now, some damage is very light damage. And that light damage gets treated either through repentance in this world. You could do repentance on any damage that you cause to yourself in this world. While you're in this world, you could repair it. You could do a mitzvah. There's always a path of teshuvah. There's always a path to fix mistakes that we made in the past. There's a story shared of a Jew who made it his mission in life to sleep with every famous prostitute in the world. And he used all his wealth. And when he was with one of the most famous prostitutes of his time, that prostitute said, "You have no hope of going to heaven." And that statement to him shocked him. What do you mean? How could that be? And that notion, he made him extremely devastated, and he started seeking out a path of repentance. And when he saw that it wasn't enough, he broke down in tears, and he started crying between his legs until he passed out and died from that anguish. And a heavenly voice came out and said that he received his portion in paradise. And one of the great sages heard that voice and said, "Hey, look at this. We're working 70, 80 years to receive, build our home in paradise, and he does it in one instant." So the path of repentance is extremely powerful, but sometimes the soul doesn't do repentance in this world. And so the light damage can be treated with Gehenna that we explained in the last lesson before it enters its paradise. Similar to a physical body, certain wounds could be easily repaired. Other wounds are more debilitating. And those wounds that the soul receives from sinful behavior in this world, sometimes that's another reason why it may have to come down. To repair that damage, hopefully the soul in the next reincarnate will repair the damage that was done by doing teshuvah, by repentance. So we have two reasons so far of why you might be reincarnated. One that always exists is to do your mission, which is reflected by the three things in the three slides here. Do your mission, which does the 613 mitzvahs, study the whole Torah, and reveal your individual portion within the Torah. But besides for that, another reason why your soul may be coming down again is even one part of certain sparks of your soul need to come down in order to be elevated by its mission, and other sparks need to come down again in order to be repaired from the damage that was caused in a previous lifetime. So now we have the building blocks of why you're here. You're here, either you're a root soul, so you're here 613 mitzvot, you have to do all of them from scratch, or you're reincarnate, and you only have to focus, there's a few areas that are a primary focus for you, And you also might be having to repair, this is something you find in epigenetics, where sometimes people are experiencing things and they say the reason why you have that trauma has nothing to do with what you experienced. It's a trauma that your great-great-grandfather is going through, from the Holocaust or something he experienced. So you have that trauma within you. So in a similar vein is this concept of reincarnation. Sometimes you might say, like, why am I in such a hard marriage? It's unbearable. It's a very difficult marriage. Maybe the answer is that marriage is the refinement that you need to make you to repair that part of the soul. Possibly, we're not saying that is the way, that possibly. And again, as we started off this lesson, answer to question 19, he wrote, I don't know, and he wrote, I don't know either. So I don't know exactly how it works and how do you know, but that's the general thing. We're going to skip the following section for the moment because someone's leaving at 11 o'clock and I want to get the time right. Okay, Cheryl? So we're going to come back to this section of text 7 at the end of other forms of reincarnation that might be possible, but let's jump now into text 10. How do we know who we were and what our mission is now? So let's get a volunteer. I think everyone read for us. Is that correct? Okay, so let's start again from the beginning. So Cheryl, read for us text 10. Page 180.
It is impossible to deduce or intuit whether one possesses a reincarnated soul or not, unless one is the recipient of a mystical communication in this regard. You may wonder, how then will we know the purpose for which we entered this world? Which mitzvah we must scrupulously perform, or which transgression we must especially avoid? The answers are naturally ingrained in us. We experience natural affinity and longing to perform a certain mitzvah. When that mitzvah is critical to our present incarnation, or our inclination strives especially hard to entice us to commit a particular sin, for it is the very same sin in which we blundered during our previous life.
Okay, isn't that fascinating? So first of all, the first idea is if you have a certain excitement to do something or certain gifts or skills, that is a good indicator that that's your area in life that you have to fulfill. So if you have writing skills, so you might say, yeah, but what is or you have, let's say, comedy is in your blood. Mm-hmm. Say, but what's a nice Jewish boy doing in comedy? But maybe that's the fact that you have affinity towards it means that maybe is your place in the world to elevate. So if you're an artist, obviously it has to be kosher because that's the whole goal. You're trying to elevate that area in life. But if that's your affinity, so knowing what skills and gifts you have, or know your position and station in life, or your affinity towards a specific mitzvah, if you love Shabbos, then that's a strong indicator that this is probably the part of your mission in this world. There's also another opposite indicator. And the opposite indicator is if you have a mitzvah that you struggle with so deeply that everyone looks at you like you're a meshuggah, you're crazy. Like, get over it. What's so difficult? Everyone else is fine. Everyone else, master, is not tempted to this. And you just can't get it. You can't get it right. You're constantly struggling. And since you were, let's say you struggled, prayer was always boring for you. You always couldn't relate to prayer. It was boring. It was difficult. Maybe that's an indicator that this is your mission in life too. In other words, we have an extreme indicators. If you're naturally drawn to it, it's an indicator that that's your mission. If you're naturally opposed to it, that's also an indicator that it might be part of your mission because the evil inclination knows how important it is for you to do this, and therefore it's using all its tools possible to paralyzing you from actually doing it. It introduces guilt into your life and shame and whatever tools the clever evil inclination can do to prevent you from doing it. And so that's another area, another way of knowing what it is to do. Check out this fascinating letter from in text 11, written by Lubavitcher Rebbe to a person experiencing trouble in his marriage. So let's get Leslie. Leslie, if you could read first text 11.
I am replying to your letter in which you inform me that you accepted and are implementing my directives regarding Torah study classes and giving charity. But as far as the situation at home is concerned, your marital harmony appears only superficially to have improved, while the underlying reality remains unsatisfactory. I already told you in my previous letters that it would be challenging. You are meant to find it difficult, for the success of your life's mission hinges upon your sincere efforts toward marital harmony. Our mystical teachings reveal that rare individuals are born with original souls. The rest of us are reincarnations. We return to complete the fulfillment of the mitzvot when we missed in previous lifetimes. Certainly, we are obligated in all of the mitzvot in every lifetime, but the specific mitzvot we omitted in earlier incarnations are critical to the rectification of our souls and the rectification of this world. Using the evil inclinations as a guide, we can identify the mitzvot that determine the outcome of our life's mission. Our inclination opposes the mitzvot that we finalized in previous lifetimes, but only to the degree necessary to create free choice between good and evil. By contrast, it unleashes a fierce storm of opposition with countless hurdles and challenges when we approach a mitzvah that we failed to fulfill in previous incarnations. Therefore, your many hurdles to marital harmony reveal its indispensability to your rectification. Do whatever it takes to achieve harmony. Do whatever it takes to achieve harmony.
Right? So certain individuals have a better clue of what our mission might be in this world. And here the Rebbe is telling him, your mission in this world is to bring harmony to this marriage. That is your mission. All other parts of your life, all the other Torah and everything, you got to do them. But that's not your main mission why you were reincarnated. You were reincarnated to make this marriage into be there as a support to your spouse and be kind to your spouse and bring harmony. And just to show how radical this could become, there's a story of the Arizal, that there was once a man who was almost in his 40s. He said, I'm not married, and I'm looking for my bashert. He came to the Arizal in Safat, and the Arizal told him, your wife is in Alexandria. Go to Alexandria. You'll find her there. So he went, he met someone, he married her. His father-in-law gave a dowry of 150,000 coins. And it was the most beautiful marriage he ever had. Unfortunately, 3 months later, she died. So he was extremely broken. He came back to the Arizal. What did you do to me? You made me go all the way to Alexandria, Egypt, find my bashert, and 3 months later, she dies? Where's the justice in that? So the Arizal said, do you remember 20 years ago, you had a falling out with a certain baker? There was a baker that you were in a partnership with, and he made you lose 150,000 gold coins. And then he passed away, and you had this grudge you were holding against him for a long time. This soul of the baker it had damage it had to fix because it wronged you. It had damage it had to fix. So it was reincarnated into this woman in Alexandria. But she was only a baby. So you had to wait 20 years in order to be able to marry her. In order for her to be once she restored to you the 150,000 coins, and she restored to you 3 months of bliss to recompensate for the 3 months of aggravation. So that soul did its mission in its life. And now and it returned to heaven. Had you forgiven the baker 20 years ago, you wouldn't have to wait for the soul to come down. The soul would have been forgiven, and the soul wouldn't need to reincarnate. So the whole reason for this delay in your marriage is in a way because you held off on forgiving the baker. Had you forgiven the baker, God wouldn't have to settle the score because you settled it yourself. You forgave the person, and so you allowed that soul to enter paradise on its own. But since you held this grudge, and the grudge was a valid grudge, so the soul had to come down to repair that. And now that you repaired it, now you can go on to actually remarry and finally meet your actual basher. And a few months later, he met his actual basher, and they lived a happy life. So this is a crazy story to illustrate this concept of how reincarnation is used in Judaism. That it's not the entire soul that comes down, it's a portion of the soul that comes down, and that soul gets elevated. And maybe we could find some comfort in that, in trying to understand some of God's ways. Some things seem unjust, like why do good people suffer? This is one way, one kind of solution where you say, we only know life in this reincarnation, but we don't know previous reincarnations, what was going on. For example, one of the first stories recorded in the Torah is that Adam's two children fought each other, right? Cain and Abel. Cain was the farmer and killed Abel, the shepherd. And there was three things that Cain did to Abel. Cain, first of all, it says in the writings of the sages that Cain, who did Cain and Abel marry? Where did they procreate from? We know Adam had Eve, but who did Cain and Abel procreate from? Cain was born with a twin sister, and Abel was born with triplet sisters. And Cain said, I'm the older brother, I should have a right to marry too. And Abel said, they're my triplet sisters, I should be able to marry the two. So that was one element of the feud that they had. A deeper element of the feud was Cain said, I'm the farmer, I own the land. Get your sheep off of my land. Why is your sheep grazing from my land? You have dominion over the movable objects. So get your sheep off my land. So Cain was like, okay, Abel was like, okay, give me your clothing. They had this that was another argument they had. And finally, Cain actually killed Abel. So it says, Jethro, the father-in-law of Midian, was the reincarnation of Cain. Jethro gave food to Moses when Moses was running away from Egypt. When he was a young man, he had to run away from Egypt after killing the Egyptian. So he had to run away. Jethro fed him and protected his life. That was a way of rectifying Cain killing Abel. If you remember, there was something to do with the sheep the sheep of Jethro being chased away from the well, and Moses saying it's okay, you can have from the well. That was kind of a rectifying where the sheep were being fed. And finally, Zipporah was the daughter of Jethro by Jethro giving it to Moses. Moses was a reincarnate of Abel, and so the extra sister went to Abel. It was like this is one of the teachings in Kabbalah. It teaches, so just how this concept is used of how later souls are restoring past issues that have happened many, many ages ago. So again, two of the primary things. You come down to do your mission. And sometimes while you're here, you're also fixing past damage. Okay? Or being a recipient. So that's the main fundamental principles of this class. Let's read text 12 to drive this point home. Ross.
From the moment that God instructed our forefather Abraham, go from your land, following which it is stated, Abram kept traveling further southward, the mystical process of the rectification of divine sparks was launched. Subsequently, by decree of divine providence, individuals travel to the locations in which the divine sparks that these specific individuals must rectify await their redemption. Saintly individuals with spiritual vision perceive the locations in which their divine sparks await their engagement, and they take the initiative to journey to those locations. The rest of us are left in the hands of the primary cause behind all causes and the ultimate reason behind all reasons. God orchestrates countless apparent causes and circumstances to bring specific individuals to the locations in which their predestined service of rectification is required.
You know, very few souls are righteous people, very, very righteous holy men, that they know exactly where they need to go. They know exactly why their soul is here, and they just go to that place to rectify that part of the world. However, most of us, in order for God to get us to where we need to be, we have to get delayed at a layover in some airport, or we get a better job offering in a different place. God makes things work that we should end up in the place that we need to be in order to rectify the portion of the world that we need to rectify. So we don't have to worry, I don't know what my mission is. Maybe I won't be able to accomplish it here. No, all of us will be able to rectify, but it demands that we pay extra attention to every moment and every place and seize the opportunities, because maybe that is the whole reason why we came down to this world. As Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov famously said, for 70, 80 years, a Jew comes down to this world, maybe the whole reason, just to do a favor for another person. So you met someone and you had the chance to be kind to him, or to say, I'm not going to show kindness to him, I'm going to show justice or whatever. I'm not in the mood of helping him, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I don't know him. Think maybe that is the whole reason why you came down to this world. That chance encounter could unlock the whole reason that your soul reincarnated to the world. So it gives us a certain focus on seizing every opportunity in every moment in every location. So you want to identify your personal mission. There's 3 indicators: our strengths and passions, our weaknesses and struggles, and our circumstances. These 3 help us figure out what our personal mission in this reincarnation is. As we mentioned earlier, most of our souls are reincarnations. However, remember we said that there were 600,000 individuals that they contain within them the root souls, the original root souls. All of those, it says, before Mashiach comes, are going to re-come down into the physical world, because ultimately, all 600,000 root souls, because of certain mistakes they made in the wandering in the desert and other mistakes that they made, the goal originally was for the Jews to leave Egypt, receive the Torah, go into Israel, the world is rectified. But because of certain blunders of that generation, it took much, the souls couldn't accomplish their mission in time because of certain blunders and certain spiritual damage. And therefore, it's taken us over 2,000-3,000 years in order to get to a place where God says, okay, now it's ready for these 300 souls to come, 600,000 souls to come back into this world and to bring us over the edge. So it's a very powerful idea. As a general rule, we're all reincarnations. And for most of history, we were reincarnations of a spark of one of the 600,000 souls. But it could be that Ross and Sophia and Cheryl and different people in this class today have one of the primary root souls, are not just a spark, but are the general root souls within us, because it says the generation before Mashiach will have the 600 root souls. So let's take a look at remember we did an exercise on page 175 where we wanted to see what our positions were on true or false statements. We had a bunch of true or false statements that we tried to answer in the beginning. So let's take a look at those statements and see where we landed. Statement number 1, belief in reincarnation is basic to Judaism. It's a trick question because it's not a basic. Depends what you mean basic. Do you mean it's a accepted concept to Judaism? It is an accepted concept by all groups of Judaism. The only thing is, it's not a fundamental principle of Judaism. That means if someone doesn't believe this, we don't consider them a heretic. You know, there's 13 fundamental principles. If there's a Jew who believes that the sky is not blue, the sky is really green, or the sky is really black, or whatever, that doesn't make you less Jewish or more Jewish. And the same thing is in reincarnation. If there's a Jew that doesn't believe in reincarnation, it's not necessarily our mission in the world to make sure every Jew knows of reincarnation. It's a basic accepted concept, but it's not a fundamental concept. It just unlocks a lot of mysteries for us, that it explains a lot of important things to us once we understand reincarnation, but it's not one of the 613 mitzvot or one of the foundational beliefs that we must, every Jew has to know. Number 2. So in a sense, it is basic, in a sense, so it's a trick question. Number 2 is also a trick question. We asked, in the Jewish view, reincarnation means that a soul that inhabited one body returns to inhabit another. And the answer is yes and no. A small spark from the previous life becomes a new soul, like the flame example, becomes a new soul into new body. So there's no other soul in history that has had the exact same personality as your soul. Your soul has a unique personality that no other soul in history has ever had within the family of your root soul. So obviously you share some personality with the previous soul, but you're not, you're more a clone or a twin than a return, a revision. In number 3, we said a human soul can be reincarnated in a non-human entity such as an animal or plant. That's an area where I skipped, and if we have time, which I think we do have time, we'll discuss that option. And question number 4. A reincarnated soul does not have its own identity, but shares its identity with someone who lived in a previous life. This is a false statement. You have your own personal identity, which is a twin or a clone or a relative of a previous soul. Number 5, the purpose of doing good in one's current life is to be reincarnated as a person of higher status in a future reincarnation. False. The goal of there is other spiritual beliefs that are not Jewish that believe the whole goal is to become a better person. So your soul comes down again in a higher class individual and keeps on coming down until it becomes part of the elite group of people. That is not a Jewish belief. The Jewish belief is your soul comes down to make this, to be part of the marriage of God and the world, to make the world a home for God. And if we didn't complete that job, or we caused a lot of spiritual damage to our soul, then we come down to repair that damage and to continue our efforts to make the world a home for God. 6, a soul is reincarnated as a penalty for sins committed in a prior life. Possibly. When we mean penalty, it's not just, it's more rectification. Not punishment for the sake of punishment, but it's more a cleansing process, a rehabilitation. And 7, most souls today are reincarnations. That is correct. That's a true statement. Did we finish all that? Okay. Now since we have the time, okay, before we do that, let's jump to text 14, because we mentioned this concept of before Mashiach comes, the root souls return. So let's get Sandy, if you can read for us text 14 on page 194.
Jewish women and girls played an essential role in the highly critical mission of bringing about the true and complete redemption. The women played an indispensable role in our exodus from Egypt. Indeed, our sages state that our ancestors were redeemed from Egypt in the merits of the deeds of the righteous women. As we've discussed repeatedly, they fulfill this role in each subsequent generation. There is especially true of our present time, for we are the reincarnation of the generation that left Egypt. Indeed, we can clearly observe that Jewish women and girls are naturally predisposed far more readily than the men folk to the idea of immediately leaving the exile. Less effort is required to convince them that we must leave this exile already than is required to inspire the men.
Yeah. And in fact, the Rebbe continues over there. You have to realize this was said in the 1970s, you know, when much of the orthodoxy was, was entrenched in a certain worldview of women's place in the world. And the Rebbe said, no, women have a very powerful place in the world. They're going to be the ones that are going to bring the redemption, and men give them the respect that they need and their rightful place, and because they are the ones that are going to bring us over the fold. Next course is actually a course discussing the whole topic of it can happen. This can happen. Mashiach is actually, is it a logical thing to believe in Mashiach, or do we have to accept it on blind faith? And I predict that many more women are going to sign up to that class than men. That's my prediction, based on this passage here, that they're more, their inclination is that this world is not the way it should be, but this world is a beautiful place at its roots. So those two opposite ideas, that the world is broken and that the world is inherently beautiful, it just needs to be uncovered. Those women are predisposed to that idea more intuitively than men. Men either say the world is okay, or the world is unfixable, or whatever. These two. So that's for next course. Okay. So that's the fundamental building blocks. And if you're a walk away today, you kind of get the Jewish idea of reincarnation and what it means. Now, let's discuss some alternative references that are made about reincarnation, other possibilities. Until now, we kind of painted a black and white view that your soul comes down to repair damage and primarily to do its mission by elevating a certain section of the world, a certain section of the Torah, elevates into all the parts of the soul. But let's read text 8. Who's going to read text 8? I'll read text 8. Page 185. When a human soul comes to the world and becomes soiled by sin in the process, it reincarnates in another body to rectify itself. That second life is its first reincarnation. If it fails to rectify itself during the lifetime, it may return in a second reincarnation. If it again fails to find rectification, it may endure a third reincarnation. After that, however, it is no longer provided opportunities for rectification via reincarnation. So what happens to it? What happens? How could that be? How could a part of the soul, isn't it indispensable? Don't we need all souls to be rectified before Mashiach comes? So how's this going to work? So let's read text 9. Behold, God does all these twice or thrice with man. The limitation of twice or thrice applies with man, meaning that a human soul is not subsequently reincarnated in a human body. Rather, it is forced to wander the planet until it is reincarnated in an inanimate, vegetative, or animal entity. Then after it has done its penance, there is hope for its future, for God's endless mercies extend to all his creations. In other words, what the Emek HaMelech is saying, that when the Arizal was teaching that the soul only reincarnates 3 times, which means a total of 4 presents in the world, its first time and 3 future ones, and then it's lost. All it means is that part of the soul that wasn't rectified hovers amongst the world, trying to find a place where it can settle. So it's not able to go through Gehenim, a cleansing process, because the damage is too deep, right? It has to hover around, and finally it implants itself in one of these kind of life forms, a stone, minerals, a plant, some kind of thing. And 2 things could happen. Either someone could do a mitzvah with that object, and that the fact that you did a mitzvah with that object helps the soul that's attached to that object find some cleansing. Or alternatively, even if no one does a mitzvah with that object, no one uses that object for a holy purpose. No one made a blessing over, let's say, the food that you eat. Think about that. According to this teaching, if you're eating some licorice, maybe that licorice has a soul that is stuck and needs elevation. And by you saying, I'm going to use this licorice to make me happier today, or I'm going to make a blessing on the licorice, or it's Shabbat and I want to enjoy Shabbat, so I'm going to have licorice on Shabbat. It could be you're helping that soul, giving it another chance to find elevation. Even if that were not the case, even if the soul, if no one did a mitzvah with this thing, the fact that the human soul had to spend its life in existence in a physical thing that's not suited to it, the human soul and the body is like a glove. Although they argue and squirm, but they're that odd couple that are joined at the hip. You know, they need each other as much as they fight with each other. But the animal body is not a good fit for the human soul, and neither is plants or rocks. It's just not a good fit, and that brings a tremendous amount of suffering to the soul. And sometimes suffering is like a soul catharsis that allows the soul to finally break free. God's like, I gave you 3 chances. What's the chance that you'll be able to rectify a 4th time? Well, once the soul experiences this catharsis by being implanted in a plant or an animal or a stone or anything for that matter, your iPhone, that could help. The soul get another chance. It's very rare. It's a very rare concept. The truth is, I don't want to speak to how rare it is. I really don't know. I have no expertise on that. And there's also one other concept, and that is the concept called impregnation. So let's read text 7, text 7a. Who's our volunteer for text 7a?
I'm back. I'll read. I'm back. The concept of Gilgul reincarnation is that a soul requiring further rectification enters the body of a child as it emerges from its mother's womb to serve as a newborn soul. It has no permission to leave that individual until the person's destined day of death. By contrast, the concept of Ibor, soul impregnation, is that a soul enters an adult body that is already inhabited by a soul. The person's primary soul received at birth. In this case, the individual is merely impregnated with a guest soul in addition to harboring a primary soul. The individual then carries the extra soul, much as a woman carries a child in her womb.
Okay, so he says there's this interesting concept. You, besides for your main soul, you may be the host of another soul. Now, why might you be the host of another soul? For what purpose? You have your own mission to do. What are you carrying the other person's soul? So there's really 2 reasons. So let's read text 7b. He continues. And Cheryl, you're doing a great job, so continue.
All right. A soul experiences Ibor for one of 2 reasons. A, the impregnated soul comes to an individual for its own sake. In its previous life, it failed to perform a particular mitzvah and was therefore left lacking. This was the kind of mitzvah that was impossible to perform under the conditions of that lifetime, such as a mitzvah of Yabam, Chalitza, and the like. It is therefore not obligated to engage in a full-scale incarnation, for soul impregnation is sufficient.
So let's pause for a second before you read B. Let me explain that concept. Sometimes a soul is prevented from doing its mission to no fault of its own, right? For example, let's explain here the mitzvah of Yibum. This is a concept called levirate marriage. There's a mitzvah that if a woman becomes a widow without any children, and she wants to marry the brother of her husband, of her deceased husband, it is a mitzvah on the husband to either marry her, although normally it's forbidden for a brother-in-law to marry. This is the one exception where the forbidden becomes a mitzvah, or he has to perform chalitza, which is a special process where he says, no, I don't want to marry her, and I will not give her children, even though she didn't have children from the past marriage with my brother. These two, either yibum or chalitza, the marriage or the breaking, saying, I am not going to marry her, that whole ceremony, these are mitzvahs that most souls will never ever do. Most people will never experience such a concept. It's a very unique circumstance. And so for your soul not to be able to complete, sometimes your soul needs to be able to do this mitzvah, so sometimes your soul will be impregnated into a person which will be presented with this kind of circumstance. And then when they do the mitzvah, so then your soul is complete. So your soul doesn't have to re-come down to a body, because this is those kind of mitzvahs that are rare and don't need, it's not so massive and it's not so much in your control. So for those things, your soul could be impregnated into somebody else who's going through that experience, and then just for the moment that he's going to do that mitzvah. So he'll come down, your soul will be impregnated with that person. If that person does the mitzvah, your soul is free and will leave. If he doesn't do the mitzvah, your soul might leave and come back to somebody else that might have the chance to do the mitzvah. So that's that first concept. Cheryl, if you continue,
Right.
the other
B,
option.
Yeah, the impregnated soul comes solely to assist an individual, to bring a person additional merit, or to guide an individual in matters of Torah and mitzvah. In this case, the impregnated soul lacks nothing for itself.
So here is it saying sometimes a soul might have no personal benefit, but he's doing something without any agenda. He's saying that person could use a boost, and God says we need that person to fulfill his mission. He needs the boost. Go help him out. So we become two souls fighting against a challenge instead of one. Even though the original soul was already in paradise, already in heaven, it didn't need any rectification. It did all its mission, but sometimes God allows for that to happen. How commonly is it to happen? Again, I don't know. I don't know if it's a common thing or uncommon, but it's a possibility. So partial reincarnation is a temporary guest soul that you might be hosting, and it's either for the sake of the guest soul. That means you have your mission, but you are encountering a situation that other souls could benefit from if you succeed in this mission. And so those other souls latch on to you for the moment in order to be able to benefit from you doing that mitzvah, because it's a unique mitzvah that most souls don't get a chance to do. Or it's really coming down to help you. You're struggling in your mission and you need the help, and sometimes you'll feel like a refreshed strength, and you're like, where did that come from? Nothing can explain me suddenly feeling, I have the strength to overcome that challenge. I don't know where that came from. Possibly it's because you're now you're pregnant with another soul that you don't even realize that's giving you that extra strength. So two possibilities. And then in the non-human reincarnation, after 3 unsuccessful reincarnations, it is possible as a form of rehabilitation, not punishment, more rehabilitation of the soul, that either you'll do a mitzvah on a Jew will do a mitzvah, or even a non-Jew. Non-Jews also have mitzvahs that they have to do. And if a non-Jew will do a mitzvah on that, that could serve as an elevation for that inanimate or plant or animal object that's hosting a human soul. Or just the fact that the human soul was entrapped in that body for a long time can serve as a healing and a cleansing that allows it to come down for another try. Okay, now we'll go to the summary video. Before we do the summary video, Viktor Frankl, famous psychologist, he was a Holocaust survivor, and he witnessed horrible things in the camp, and he saw that there were people that saw there were different he studied different inmates or different inmates, whatever, different people in the camps, and the way they responded to the facts of what was going on. And certain people, the people that believed that they have family to return to or had found meaning in what they were doing, they were able to withstand it and endure. even intense suffering. If they found meaning in it, it helped. Other people who found no meaning in what was going on, it was just random death and chaos for no purpose, and there was no purpose for him to go through the death, they gave up much quicker. And so he wrote a whole work on basically that the fundamental drive of humanity is to find meaning into what's going on. And he said mental health, we have a text for it, but we're short on time, so we're not going to actually read it, but we'll read the snippet on the slide. Mental health is the tension between what one has already achieved and what one's still out to accomplish. If someone feels they haven't achieved anything, it's very hard for them. That's a kind of psychosis. If someone feels that there's nothing to accomplish, it's also problematic. It's that tension between I've accomplished, but there's still more to accomplish that creates a healthy mental state. And this view of reincarnation actually helps us feel that, like, we came to this world and feel we haven't done anything. What are you talking about? Your soul has been here many times and has done so much. And you're standing on their shoulders because you get the blessings of the parts of your soul that did so much good, because you're a breakaway of a soul that did so much good. So you already have all that blessing that comes with you. Now you have a few more things to elevate, so you can feel confident and proud that you did so much already, but you could also feel there's a major purpose over here, because even though your soul did so much, but there's still a few things that you have to do, and only you could do it. And every minute and every moment could be that opportunity and reason for why you came down to this world. So the belief in reincarnation, although it's not a basic fundamental principle of Judaism, but if you do choose to believe in it, it can help majorly in your mental health and recognizing that you have so much to do, even though you accomplish so much.
Lesson 5. Where we go again. 1. Adam possessed the Jewish master soul that ultimately branched out into the 600,000 souls that received the Torah at Mount Sinai. All subsequent Jewish souls are offshoots of these soul roots. 2. The 600,000 primary souls were each given a part of the world to perfect through fulfillment of the 613 mitzvot. When a soul accomplishes its mission, it itself also gains rectification and elevation. 3. Every root soul must also study each of the Torah's 4 layers of teaching and uncover its unique part in Torah. 4. Few, if any, of the original souls completed all 613 mitzvot, nor the required study during their original lifetimes. Reincarnation provides souls with additional opportunities to complete their missions and the rectification of the world and themselves. 5. When a person dies, all the refined elements of their soul return to heaven. A new soul, built from the elements that were left unrectified, is then grafted from the stem soul and returned to this world. 6. As a general rule, our souls are reincarnations, but it is impossible to be conscious of or to accurately sense the experiences of our previous lifetimes. 7. Clues to the nature of our soul's unique task in this world can be gleaned from A. Our strengths and passions, B. Our weaknesses and struggles, and C. Our unique life circumstances. 8. The Kabbalistic view of reincarnation does not deny us our personal identity. Each of us is a complete and unique individual who is simultaneously and integrally linked to a far greater reality. Reincarnation ascribes greater importance to our existence and provides each of us a unique role within the overall human mission.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Lesson 5. It was really nice for me to meet all of you and experience every student body has its own unique flavor, And this was a special flavor I got from this class, so thank you for the opportunity. And as always, there's so much to be gained by visiting myjli.com/soul. You could see the PowerPoints there, you could see the videos. There's also other articles and videos related to what we discussed here today. If you're fascinated with the topic and want to learn more, visit myjli.com/soul. And with that, I wish you all a wonderful week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to stick around if anyone has a few more questions. But everyone have a wonderful day.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Okay, Rabbi, I want to ask you one thing as long as you're sticking around.
Yeah.
For 2 minutes, okay? In essence, though, if we're all a stem shoot, in a sense, from Adam, we're all a stem shoot. Is Adam the original soul? We're all a stem shoot from this particular first soul in some way, shape, or form.
You mean all of humanity versus just the
Yes.
Jewish people?
All of you.
So the truth is that Adam, there's different dimensions of the soul. And what we were discussing today was the part of the soul whose mission it is to bridge heaven and earth. And that is done through the 613 mitzvot, and that was given uniquely to the Jewish people. So that element of the soul wasn't shared. But there are other parts of the soul that have other mission, a different mission to do, and that is shared by the whole of humanity in that general soul. And another interesting thing, there are certain souls, it says, that, this paradigm that we just explained means that when Adam was created, all souls were created in a way. All souls came down. So the world already had all the light that it needed. It just, has to actually play itself out and actually do the work. But the truth is, in other mystical writings, it says that sometimes God sees that the world needs a new soul, a soul with a unique mission that wasn't included in the original soul, and that applies to very, very few and rare individuals. That's why we didn't bring it here, because it's not related to the most of us, but there is such a concept.
Yeah. And is it, in terms of Kabbalah, this is all Kabbalah, correct? I mean,
the only way we can know of it is really Kabbalah. Because how else would we know?
Right. The other thing is it, I think I'm going to answer my own question. It's not really everyone has the soul, like a serial killer. They would still have a soul. They just wouldn't
utilize the mission.
Yeah, they wouldn't use it correctly.
Exactly. They would ignore their reasons for that.
Because we use that expression, I don't think this person has a soul, but that's not true. Everyone has a soul. It's what you do with it.
Yeah. Or he's really not in touch with his soul. He's
not in touch. Okay.
He's so divorced from what his purpose here is.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's why sometimes, the Torah might say, if a person willingly murdered someone else in the presence of witnesses, and he was warned, you should execute him, right? So you say, how's that rehabilitative? How is that rehabilitating on the person? How does that help? So we're saying, no, it's not rehabilitative. It's just the soul. He's so not in touch with the soul, and he's been so lost that there's no hope for recovery at this moment. So the soul has to kind of be separated.
Okay.
There's no utility in having the soul stay here in this body for much longer, because we don't expect this person to ever come in touch.
Got it.
But that's very rare. It says that the Jewish courts, if a court executed a person once in 70 years, it was considered a bloody court. It was something very rare. But there are people, that they take it to such an extreme of how they torment their soul to such a degree.
Yeah.
So we always hope for rehabilitation, but not always is rehabilitation possible.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. This is really good. I appreciate it.
Okay. Nice to meet
Thank
you,
you.
Sarah.
Bye. Go back to Long Island.